Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Friday, May 16th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness, and if you choose to do that, before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains a reality management worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. You can also, from the webpage at whyagain.org, you can download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them, even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you and help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. We help people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd appreciate you doing so by giving us a call through the Zoom app. If you pick one of the phone numbers that Zoom makes available and enter our meeting code, you can talk to us. If you have a Zoom window open on your browser, you can enter our meeting ID number and then share whatever you want, your voice or your video with us. Our meeting ID number on Zoom is 853-2357-4173. That's 853-2357-4173. Or you can email me. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. Or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or a comment from you through an email, we will address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody chooses to share with us through email or phone or on the Zoom app, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service, and that's just a lot easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. Whether it's reading from the various books we read from with commentary, or actually stepping through a worksheet or fielding questions from people just like you about how this process works and what can make it more efficient. Um, if you scan through the best of shows that have been curated out of the last 14 years of internet shows, and the first 8 years, it was 1 hour a day, 5 days a week. And for the last six, it's been 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. And if you scan through the shows that have been highlighted out of that collection as highlight shows, you will find that the vast majority of them are the result of people just like you calling in with comments or questions. So when you call, when you raise a question, you add quality to the show. We had a support group last night, and there were two brand new people. And as often happens, the new people come in, they ask questions, and then they get nervous. Oh, are we ruining things? You know, these people have been here a long time. Is it a waste of time for me to ask these simple questions? And without prompting, one of our group members said, you know, I really appreciate these questions because it's a wonderful review. And what gets stimulated as we look at these questions together and answer them, what gets stimulated in the hearts and minds of various group members is a blessing for everybody. So please feel free to raise a hand, ask a question, make a comment, offer a testimonial. And in lieu of that, I'm going to return to the book A Walk in the Physical by Christian Sundberg. The last reading we were doing was on the theme of I forget what it was. Challenge as a gift, life is feedback. And hardship as a gift was the last article, or little essay that we read. And the next category I'm going to choose to read from is titled Freedom from Belief. And I may have read this category heading before, or it might be that I haven't read it since the last time we read through this book a couple years ago. But it comes to me to just talk a little bit about belief and what would be the motivation to urge me toward getting free from belief, to dismantling belief. And Krishnamurti would talk about thought and belief, and he would say, belief is just an old, dead, crystallized thought. And so, contrary to what so many in our culture and so many in our religions would want us to buy into, there's a far better option for guidance in this life than beliefs, than dogma. And, you know, this is coming from, you know, I'm a person who was raised reciting dogmatic creeds and learning and memorizing them and basically chanting them um, probably all through my first 8 grades of schooling, 5 days a week, and then again on Sunday. So I feel somewhat qualified to have an opinion in this arena because I've tried it both ways. I've tried through kindergarten, grade school, high school, and college, living my life according to belief and dogma and ritual and church going and nightly prayers that were the same every night, etc. Prayers over food that were the same every meal, etc. So I've had a lot of experience living from belief and dogma and ritual. And now we're pushing close to 50 years where I've gradually worked to dismantle the beliefs and the dogmas and learning to live in the question and learning to live by what I would call direct observation, far more than the belief or the dogma. And I like the way it was introduced to me once. How do you, and this was by a Jungian psychiatrist, he said, how do you drive your car? And I stumbled with the answer for a while. And he said, you drive it by direct observation, right? You don't drive it by belief. You don't drive it by um, hopes and prayers. You keep your eyes focused in front of you and off to the side. You scan the back mirrors, and you're always using the direct moment's input. If you're a good driver, if you're driving well, you're awake and you're alert, and you're letting the truth of life act on you. And you might have some rules of the road. You might have knowledge about who has right of way. You might have knowledge about a green light means you have the right of way and you should go, and a yellow light means caution, and a red light means stop. And you can have all of those rules and guidelines and beliefs in your system. And yet, if you're a good driver, if you come up to an intersection, even though the light is green, if there are people in the crosswalk in front of you, you don't even have to ask yourself, should I keep going, or should I slow down, or should I stop? Because the truth of the situation acts on you. And your response flows from that which makes sense, that which is compassionate, that which is connected and flowing. Whereas I've actually been on the road with people who like to drive according to shoulds, right? And they like to say, well, you shouldn't be here, so I'm going to move my car over into your lane. And literally, I've watched people dent fenders because I had the right of way, even though they could see that somebody else was already there. And my experience has been that's nowhere near as productive in my life as living by observation. So the category is titled Freedom from Belief. And the first essay in this grouping is titled Belief is Not Fundamental. And boy, please watch your breath, watch your tension, especially if you were raised in any kind of a religious background. The first line is going to challenge some things that you've been taught if you're any kind of a religious person or have any kind of experience with that. The first line reads, God does not require you to believe anything. And that goes 180 degrees off of what I was taught as a Catholic. God does not require you to believe anything. He, she, it is all that is. He, she, it is the profoundly loving, conscious foundation of reality that has given you the opportunity to make choices, including the choices about what you believe. You are not punished for making the wrong choices or for believing one thing over another. Countless reports from the other side, meaning people who've had near-death experiences, reiterate this. They say this over and over again. We have free will and choice for a reason. We don't need to believe anything. We don't need to live our lives from ritual or dogma. He goes on and writes, love, on the other hand, is paramount to our reason for being here. We do always inevitably experience the results of our choices, whether they're loving or unloving. The true nature of our intent is never hidden from our Creator. We often tell ourselves that we have loving reasons for doing things, and yet often our motivation is rooted in fear rather than love. Being able to successfully navigate this phenomenon sometimes requires taking a hard look at what we believe. This is because belief often arises out of the need of the ego to protect the individual or the group from their fears. Things like fear of the unknown, fear of being powerless, fear of being worthless, or fear of death. It is not always the case that belief is a tool of the ego. Indeed, we are currently creatures of form, and so we often require symbols, specific ideas, religious frameworks, in order to somehow understand and pursue the divine. Now, this is what Christian just said in that, but I know people that would question even that. Seriously question whether religion and specific ideas and religious frameworks and symbols, if those are actually necessary. Some individuals might find them useful, and yet I know people that would question if they're at all necessary at a fundamental level. They aren't fundamental, as he says, for belief is not fundamental. The material world is not fundamental to us. So he goes on and he writes, belief can be profoundly valuable and sometimes necessary to many who seek to rise above the brutal nature of our world. If they seek to grow spiritually, if they seek to know God, they might feel the need for these beliefs to be like their stepladder to get out of the pit. Beliefs can be used to orient or motivate a person in a loving action. However, belief is not the active ingredient. The active ingredient is the quality and direction of one's deepest intent, whether it be motivated out of genuine love or selfish fear, whether it is pointed toward the other and to the whole, or it's pointed toward the self. Intent transcends the context. Try to follow this. My intent goes beyond my context. And yet my intent actualizes through it. So there's the old adage that says, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so I might desperately want the best for another person and myself. And yet if I'm not willing to take actions to make that happen, the intent is pretty worthless. I have to be willing and able to elevate my intention to the level of behavior, which in Michael Rice's body of work would be called setting a goal and working to that goal. Because once I have a plan or an intention that I elevate to the level of behavior, my mind is now going to show me the steps necessary to make that happen. So the active ingredient in my growing spiritually or my choosing for love is my intention. And he goes on and says, when one seeks the Creator truly, the creator always responds, regardless of the physical metaphor or the form that's used by the individual. The consciousness itself is primary. The symbols we use are secondary. He writes, it is very important to recognize that many people are not ready to question their beliefs all the way down to their foundations. And that's totally acceptable. Everybody's free to do what they want to do. Everybody has free will. But he writes, reestablishing a lifetime's worldview can be an incredibly personally destructive process, meaning it's going to be dismantling a lot of energy, a lot of identification, a lot of sense of safety and self has to be dismantled if I'm going to start moving past my beliefs and into this living by direct observation, living in the direct experience of my true nature as love, etc. So he writes, this process is by its nature destructive, meaning deconstructing. It's not a bad thing. It's just happening to pull apart the conditioning of thought that we've been trained into that says my belief is the most important thing. When this work and other great spiritual works would say your direct experience of yourself as connected to your source is the most important thing. And the actions, the words and actions that flow out of you when you are presently, totally, perfectly, consciously, actively aware of your true nature as love, that's the important thing. That's what knowledge comes from. And the word knowledge would be referred to as meaning in this kind of work. And so he says, please do not try to push over someone's apple cart with new ideas when they're not ready. Rather, respect and uphold each person's place and their beliefs. He writes, the Spirit will always work with each individual as they are ready, and the individual will always eventually realize their actual ability to have a direct experience and therefore grow in their own way. Others, however, can benefit greatly by permitting themselves to examine the nature of their beliefs so as to discard that which does not serve love, and so as to better pursue their own, quote, next steps, close quotes, on their genuine spiritual walk. Indeed, at this time in history, this is happening right now all over the world. Oftentimes, the individual and the group, both, are greatly benefited by releasing old fear-based thought systems that include ideas such as condemnation, group favoritism, shame, and sin as some kind of a moral versus immoral activity. Christian writes, such ideas are, in fact, completely okay to release whenever one is ready, because in the very real, larger context, belief itself is not fundamental. Genuine love, however, well, that is the stuff universes are made of. So genuine love, as they call it here, is fundamental.
Dr. Tim?
Yes.
That when he says belief, or I can't even start the sentence, the word fundamental, I'm not metabolizing that word.
It isn't the absolute essence. It isn't the capital T truth. It's part of the illusion.
Okay, good.
Right? Just like,
yep.
Like Michael Rice talks about how, this body is an illusion. It's a picture that my brain is creating based on the best guess it can make because it can't keep up with the rate of vibration of the energies, the light energies and whatever kind of energies you might label it, that my body is made up of. Because my body is made up of atoms, or molecules that are made up of atoms, and atoms are 99.99999% empty space. And what isn't empty space in my atoms, we thought it was particles, but the more we look at it, we see, oh, they're not really particles, they're energy packets. And oh, by the way, they pop in and out of existence on this plane.
Yeah.
So my body is not fundamental.
Got it. Thanks. I just couldn't put, yeah, that's good. Thanks.
It's not like the bedrock foundational truth of our existence. The bedrock foundational truth of your existence is your consciousness, your awareness.
Right.
It's not your thoughts about yourself. It's not your degrees and your money in the bank. What is fundamental about you is that you are a spark of the divine mind. You are a spark of consciousness that is connected to everyone and everything in a way that your conscious logical mind can't even wrap itself around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I was thinking when people say my gut feeling is, they're talking about something that's fundamental to them, right? They have this conviction. They have an inner truth about something that might not be tangible.
They might be talking about that, right?
Okay.
But we don't know. You know, the biggest thing about this is Way of Mastery says, you know, step into the divine ignorance. You don't know what anything is or is for.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Right now, we're using words, but we're not using words to try to define things. We're using words to try and give us an opportunity to usher ourselves into an experience that's different than all the experiences we've had before.
You know, you are answering a mind shifter you gave me, which I haven't done because I don't need to. It was having to do with that man who said that it's all in the scripture. You know, he was telling me that Jesus is the only way because it's in the scripture. And you said, it is safe and healing for me to see the part of my mind that doubts what another part of me knows. And I thought, yeah. And I didn't need to do, or even I already did the mind shifter. I just thought that's true. I know what I know in my gut. I know what I know. I can't argue with this man. This is his life, and this is where he is, and that's and he's wonderful, and he's doing a lot of good stuff. But it just didn't become it wasn't an issue anyway. So thanks for the mind shifter, but I didn't use it.
Well, you're entirely welcome and deserving. And if you'll tap into what we were just reading in that last essay, did you follow it enough to hear the part that's directly related to what you're just talking about?
Yeah, I think I did. But you know what? I don't know about the other listeners, but I would love to hear the last couple of paragraphs you read again.
Yeah. So, because they're so relevant to what you were just saying, that's what I'm going to do. So, belief might be useful for some people. But remember, this essay begins with the sentence, God does not require you to believe anything. Okay? And then it says a little bit later on, beliefs can be profoundly valuable and sometimes necessary to many of those who seek to rise above the brutal nature of our world. In other words, if I'm stuck in a pit a stepladder might be a really useful thing. But once I get out of the pit, I don't need to carry that stepladder with me everywhere I go. If there's just nothing but flat ground ahead, or if I'm going skydiving, I don't need to carry a stepladder with me. So a belief can be profoundly valuable, often necessary to many people who seek to rise above the brutal nature of our world, and they seek to have a deeper experience of their connection with their Creator. Beliefs can be used to orient or motivate a person in a loving action. However, the belief is not the active ingredient in that loving action. The active ingredient is the genuine quality and the direction of one's deepest intent. Whether that intention is motivated out of genuine love or selfish fear, whether it's pointed toward the other or it's pointed toward the whole, either one is good, rather than the self. Intent transcends the context, but it actualizes it. So your intent goes beyond your physical body and your experience here. Your intent is part of that greater divine mind that you're a part of. And then it says, it's very important to recognize that many people are not ready to question their beliefs all the way down to their foundations. So this is about that man you were talking about. He's not ready to question his beliefs down to the foundations. He's only willing to question them to the point of, I found it in the scripture, and so it's true.
Right. I'm easily swayed by how powerful people can be in their beliefs.
Well, I would offer for your consideration that that's in large part because we've all been so thoroughly conditioned to put scriptures up on a pedestal, to put God up on a pedestal, to put Jesus up on a pedestal, to put the doctors in our lives up on a pedestal. Which is why I so often come back to, please don't put anybody down in a pit or anybody up on a pedestal. So if you've had decades of conditioning about how the scripture is the inerrant word of God and the Pope is infallible, and et cetera, and the priest is the only one that can absolve you of your sins, et cetera, decades of conditioning for that, it's got deep tap roots in your thought process.
Even for people who are unchurched, as I was, I was living in the culture of it. My two best pals were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's nobody that I'm aware of who's actually been living in this culture for the past 60, 70, 80 years. I mean, I was listening to something the other day about how pervasive religion was back in our parents' and grandparents' times. It's like 90% of the people in this country absolutely believed in a religion. Not all the same ones, right? But it was a huge part of their lives, so pervasive in the culture that's why it's such a big deal now that so many people are saying, well, I'm more spiritual than religious, or I'm agnostic, or what. It's shaking the foundations of what this culture was.
Yeah.
So to come back to this, they say, a Christian is writing here and says, it's totally acceptable that people do not want to give up their beliefs. What this guy, as you said, he's a lovely man. He's trying to do good work in the world. If he wants to believe that his scriptures are better than your questioning, bless his heart. I'm not in the least bit interested in condemning him for sinning differently than me. And in this case, I'm trying to use the word sinning as doing something that's off the mark, right? Because Way of Mastery would call us to, and these other teachings call us to, if I'm judging anyone or anything, I'm in error. I'm believing that my hallucination is better than their hallucination. So bless their heart, it's totally acceptable if they want to hold on to their beliefs. And it says, reestablishing a lifetime's worldview, dismantling the old one and putting a new one in place can be incredibly difficult. It's a whole process of dismantling and destructing what the structure that was there first. And so he says, do not try to push over someone's apple cart with new ideas when they are not ready. Don't go beating your head against a brick wall, is another way to say that. Don't try and change somebody else's mind. You have enough trouble managing your own. He says, rather than that, respect and uphold each person's place and their beliefs. He says the Spirit will always work with each individual as that individual is ready. And the individual will always eventually utilize their actual life experience to grow in their own way. Others, however, can benefit greatly by permitting themselves to examine the nature of their beliefs so as to discard everything that does not serve capital L love. And when they do that, they're better able to pursue their own next steps on their own genuine spiritual walk. Is that clearing that up for you? Is that enough
Yeah.
of that?
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
Because in the bottom line, all it is, creation itself, the flow of life, love, God, whatever you want to call it, is what is fundamental, and you're a part of it. You are a part of the miracle of life. How how bizarre is it that we stand back and look at a beautiful sunset or a fabulous mountain or a majestic stallion racing through the field, and we say, oh my God, that's glorious, that's a miraculous, that's such beauty, and yet we can't see that we, each of us as a spark of the creative mind, are even more magnificent than any little thing we see in nature, than all of nature itself. We are simply a part of that, and we carry that same value and magnificence in our being. We had somebody on the support group last night, and they were talking about they've had this major struggle with perfectionism. And I asked, are you aware of the nature of of the cause of your perfectionism? And she was going to go into some detailed set of, individual personal stuff. And I said, no, I'm just talking about the fact that anybody who's identified themselves as being a perfectionist is watching that whole set of behaviors they call perfectionism is happening because somewhere deep inside themselves, they're carrying a belief that they're damaged or broken. It's a false belief. We know it's false because it's negative. But you'll never find anybody who identifies themselves as a perfectionist who is not driven by an internal belief that they're running away and hiding from themselves and therefore trying to hide it from everybody else, the false belief that they're damaged or broken or unlovable in some way. I remember one time in graduate school was one of the first times it really struck me. There was a gentleman in graduate school who was one of the smartest people. He was about my age at the time. He was one of the smartest people in the entire school, which is saying a lot because it's a graduate school, right? It's not even a good college. It's people who've been to a decent college and now they're going on beyond that. So they've got a certain amount of intellect and a certain amount of drive. And he was intellectually one of the brighter people in the entire grad school. So let that sink in. Here's a guy whose intellectual capacity is much larger, noticeably more than the great and powerful Dr. Hayes, right? Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. We're still pretending that I'm great and powerful. And even though his intellectual capacity was head and shoulders above mine, this is the image I have of the first time I heard this guy talk about being a perfectionist. He's morbidly obese, which in itself clashes, in my mind, with the idea of being a perfectionist. So he's morbidly obese, but he's a nice personality and a very, very bright, as I said. But the time when I heard him talk about being a perfectionist, I got close enough to him to see that the vast part of his shoulders and the chest of his shirt was full of beard clippings. He had trimmed his beard before coming out to class and hadn't brushed it off. So not only is he morbidly obese, but he hasn't even noticed that he's got hair clippings all over his shirt. What does this tell you when somebody who's that intellectually bright is saying, I'm a perfectionist? I hope you're just sitting there in your brain trying to make sense of this. The conflict is startling. It's glaringly obvious that these two statements, these two observations can't both be true. That somewhere inside this person is the opposite of feeling like they are a perfectionist. One way to conceptualize it is to think they're using this drive to do everything on the outside correctly, or to get every answer right in class, or to have studied more than anybody else, as a way to overcome an interior belief they're holding or hiding from themselves that they're not good enough. And clearly in this case, there were all kinds of other issues going on because people don't get to be morbidly obese from good exercise and healthy eating with good care of this energy system we call the physical body. So if I want to believe I'm a perfectionist, I want to believe I'm right and you're wrong, I want to believe all I need is what's in the scriptures, that the scriptures are the absolute truth, that the scriptures that my group follows are more true and better than the scriptures another group follows. I can do that. And yet the belief and the following of the belief is not fundamental. What this work says is eventually all of us are going to move past that rigid, codified pursuit of or defense of or identification with belief and move into this direct experience of life where we start to have a lived experience of ourselves as the energy of creation expressing in form. We start to have the lived experience of everyone we're interacting with as being just like us, just travelers on the journey, just people who are trying to do their best in each moment with whatever resources they have. So please, it says here, do not try to push over somebody else's apple cart with new ideas when they're not ready. I just flashed on when Dale Allen Hoffman, we brought him to town back in 2014 or 2015, and he talked about one of the more animated segments of his presentation was when he talked about how he's known people who have been scholars of A Course in Miracles for a lot of years. And they would literally get into shouting matches with and threaten to hit people with their Course in Miracles book because of a disagreement about what the Course in Miracles really said, or a disagreement about what the words in the Course in Miracles really mean. And Dale would just, he got practically red in the face talking about it and then laughed out loud talking about it. He said, just think about how bizarre that is. This entire book is about choosing love over fear. And yet, if you don't accept it, I'm going to beat you over the head with my book. My book that's all about choosing love. This is exactly what Dr. Michael Rice said when he was talking about the way Christianity, whether it was Catholic or other Christianity, and these missionaries would pursue people. They would come out and they would go and they would explore and they would find out what to them was a new territory, and they'd go in there and they'd say, we're coming here and we're here to bring you the news of our all-powerful, all-loving God, and if you don't accept it, we're going to have to kill you. This writing, titled Belief is Not Fundamental, says, please don't do that. Please don't threaten other people. Please don't try to push your beliefs on them. Even if you have a gut feeling, even if you have a lived experience that your discovery of how living from direct observation is preferable, please allow others the liberty to choose to believe in their beliefs, or to identify with their beliefs, or to hold the belief that you're wrong because you don't believe what they believe. It's okay, he says. Eventually, we're all going to come to utilize our personal experience to grow in our own way. No two people are going to get to their destination from exactly the same path. So freedom from belief has another essay in its grouping, and this essay is titled Faith Transcends Belief. And Christian writes, in the context of your belief system, especially a religious one, if you're feeling doubt, it's a sign that your reason is compelling you to explore. It's okay to follow your reason. He has quotes. Big truth, capital B, capital T, big truth, close quotes, is not make-believe. And it does not require you to believe it in order to exist. Big truth doesn't care if you believe it or not. He writes in parentheses, only your ego requires things to be a certain way, close quotes, or close parentheses. He writes, if you genuinely seek truth, you will look fearlessly into your own history and your own experience and your own reaction to it all. If you look close enough, you will see that your beliefs have deeply colored and created your experience. In addition, if you consistently take the time to explore deeply into the very present moment, beyond your thoughts, beyond your judgments, you will have a look into your awareness itself, and you will find your awareness is fundamental. It's the bottom line thing that's been with you through every experience. And your intellectual assessments and justifications about it change from time to time, and yet your awareness never changes. So fundamental, always true, always there is your awareness. Your essence is your ability to be aware. Your consciousness to use a different word. If you take the time to look carefully, you will see that your beliefs have deeply colored and created your experience. And you will find that your thoughts about things flip and flop and change and evolve, and yet your awareness has never changed. Your consciousness, your ability to be aware, is that constant thing that never changes. He writes, quote, you, close quotes, your essence, have persisted and endured while the thoughts and the forms that you've entertained have come and gone. So this is evidence for you to experience directly that you are not your thoughts. He writes, faith then is not about simply finding an idea and holding on to it with tenacity. Faith is setting your deepest intent in the right direction, which is toward love and toward your creator or toward God, whatever you want to call it. He says toward God, no matter what you call it. Or maybe you don't give it a name. He writes, the words love with a capital L and God with a capital G attempt to encompass many aspects of truth that vastly transcend all language. So it can't encompass those things because the truth transcends the language. However, we might say that they include actually setting your intention toward fearlessness, personal responsibility, active relationship with your source. In other words, conscious awareness of your eternal connection to your source. Peace, acceptance, humility, surrender, joy, creativity, being fully aware in the current moment, and striving to put the needs of everyone, all things, before yourself. Now, this is a bit of a misnomer and misspeaking because you are a part of everyone and everything. So we're trying to talk about how if my myopic, simple, selfish pattern of thought that I call me, the great and powerful Dr. Hayes, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain, my thoughts about me are not me. My thoughts about me, in essence, can't ever truly separate me from the flow of life and all that is. However, I can create the illusion that I'm separate, and then I can take actions based on this illusion that I'm separate. But if I keep my awareness in the present moment and I have conscious awareness of my connection to all things and all people in the flow of life, then I choose behavior that benefits everyone. So Christian goes on and writes, genuinely pursuing all of that is both much more challenging and much more rewarding than tenaciously holding on to any thought pattern, any human dogma, any creed, any book, any name, or any ideal. Genuinely pursuing this set of lived experiences that he's pointing at with words like fearlessness, personal responsibility, active relationship with your source, active conscious awareness of your relationship to your source, genuinely pursuing your own inner peace and acceptance and humility and surrender, genuinely pursuing awareness of the joy that is your birthright, the creativity, and the ability to be fully present in the moment. Genuinely pursuing all of that is so much more challenging and so much more rewarding than any belief or pursuit in dogma or creed or any book or any name or any idea. All that is vastly transcends the forms that you may identify her by. Here he uses the word her, capital H, her, just so we don't get too confused to think that the creation itself has a gender, like we humans apparently have a gender. God, light, love, all that is, vastly transcends any words you might think about it or her or him. Any forms of image that you might create about her or it or him. So if you select a form to worship, it's not critical. As long as you understand that it's not the form that you're worshiping is not the same as the creative force itself. We'll come back to this on Monday when we pick up again, but this just reminds me of one of my favorite cartoons. It was a BC cartoon from many years ago. And it was a cartoon where these two cavemen were standing side by side. And also in the picture, there are these two, maybe 3 foot tall, maybe 4 foot tall uh, piles of rocks. And they were vaguely in the shape of a pyramid. And in front of one pile of rocks, there was another caveman kneeling down with, forehead touching the ground and hands extended out towards the rocks. And the caption read, from the two cavemen standing back on the side, one caveman says to the other, "Doesn't Thog look silly?" And the other caveman replies, "Yeah, he must not know that our pile of rocks is the real God." That's a distillation of the last part of what we're reading here. My images about a thing are not the same as a thing. My words and thoughts about a thing are not the same as a thing. Just like my thoughts about myself are not truly a limitation to my essence. So I thank you all for being here. I believe that Michael will start another show momentarily on needle. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. And I'll invite you back on Monday for another round. Blessings.